Welcome to Break the Needle. I'm your host, Adam Zivo, and I'm here to guide you through Canada's problems with drugs, addiction, and crime. Today, we'll be discussing whether drug use should be destigmatized. Advocates argue that destigmatization is necessary on both moral and practical grounds. They claim that there is nothing inherently wrong with drug use, that existing stigmas are baseless moralizing, and that normalizing drug use could make it easier for addicts to seek treatment. Critics, on the other hand, argue that social stigma produces a meaningful barrier to drug use, and that removing this barrier leads to increased drug consumption and addiction. So, here to help us understand this is Dr. Julian Somers. He's a Vancouver-based addiction physician and the director of the Center for Applied Research in Mental Health and Addiction at Simon Fraser University. Welcome, Dr. Somers.
It's great to be with you, Adam.
So, very simple question, drug destigmatization, good or bad?
It's not that simple a question in that destigmatization is a fairly complicated thing that doesn't have an obvious meaning to it. The way I would approach it is looking at evidence related to drug use. And I think that evidence challenges some of the points made in the pro side of your opening. Harms related to drug use are quite clear, both in the acute sense, so immediate harms associated with drug use are potential, but also there's more and more evidence demonstrating that there are long-term harms, even among people who have entered into what they describe as recovery. So they're abstaining from drugs, and this is clearest with respect to opioids. That people who are in recovery from an opioid addiction and even who have returned to full-time employment still have noticeable impacts, adverse impacts on what we refer to as health-related quality of life. So this tracks with what we understand about the impacts of drugs on our central nervous system, both in the short term and the long term. And there really isn't any sensible basis for saying that these drugs are inert and not harmful. Then we have to consider additional forms of harms, such as how drugs are procured. And we've learned through Canada's experiment in safe supply or public supply of addictive drugs that the human body's ability to develop tolerance to drugs is such that we will quite rapidly accommodate increasing doses and increasing potencies. And at a certain point, it's no longer viable. I mean, I would challenge whether we should even be providing people with these drugs based on the evidence of harmfulness that I began with. But if we go down this path and assume that we're going to make these drugs available, we have to acknowledge that for some people, tolerance will develop such that the state-provided form of drugs is no longer going to be satisfactory for them. And the reason the state-provided supply won't keep going is that it's unconscionable for the government to be providing people with doses that are so potent that they are essentially indifferent from a lethal dose.
Now,
And
quick
that's how
question,
far
Dr.
people's
Somers.
tolerance will take them. So I think there are a variety of reasons why changing our perspective away from facts in order to liberalize access to drugs we're only fooling ourselves.
Now, we've only got 1 minute left. Very quickly, Dr. Somers, can you tell me, based on your experience, do you think that there's any credibility to the argument that destigmatizing drugs will increase uptake of recovery-oriented services?
There's no evidence to suggest that changing our laws or changing perspectives around drugs will increase people's uptake of services. British Columbia is perhaps one of the clearest natural experiments where drug possession and use was decriminalized precisely with the expectation
I
that
agree
it
with
would
you.
lead to an increase
Sorry,
in
Dr.
care.
Somers, I'm going to have to cut you off. Thank you for joining us on the show. As you said, drug destigmatization doesn't work in BC. We'll find out more how it works in the United States when we get back from this commercial break.